All right, and we are now live. That I always do that weird laugh when we're live because I just feel nervous, but I have no reason to be nervous because we are doing Audre Lorde's work, really, when you think about it. So I just want to welcome everyone to this iteration. We are on episode number 12 of the full set. So welcome everyone who is just now joining us. And sorry we're late, but folks is going to be folks, and it's going to be great. So I want to introduce my esteemed colleagues because everyone here came very highly recommended. I'm excited to be on the phone with all y'all. Some of y'all, this is my first time. We have from top, and I'm going to go across. I'm not going to introduce myself. Rish Jatera, but first, like everyone to know that her name rhymes with Rish. Born in the 80s at the height of the crack era in New York City, she was witness to the devastating effects that that period had on Black and Brown families. Keeping in step with their lack of response at that time, she is watching the American government repeat the same negligence in this COVID-19 sweep. Right before the sweep hit, Rish had finished her first ebook. Oh, you got a book? Titled Root Babies, Healing Our Children with Baths, Tea, and Recipes, which you can find on her site, which is linked there in the description. In it, she spells out some child-safe remedies for all kinds of the body system challenges. And while we know there is no cure for the disease, it is her hope that the remedies she suggests in the book will soothe the symptoms until they disappear. Also a practitioner of root work, come on ATR, and a rabble rouser who wants to flip all this shit over. In the meantime, she's staying in the house, trying to keep her babies, 6 and 3, healthy and entertained while under quarantine. So go cop her book right now and check out her PayPal link. Then after her is me. And then after me, I see Melody. Melody Gross says that there have been 2 moments in her life that has changed her. Becoming a single parent and experiencing domestic violence, both of which Melody never expected. Life is funny that way. They find the humor in parenting a child who has the personality of a natural comedian. Melody finds purpose in removing the stigma of intimate partner violence and finds passion in both things. Harlem born and Charlotte raised, Melody is proud, loud, outspoken, and opinionated with tact and feelings mixed. Always on a path of freedom and what that looks like for her. Melody is a mom to the awesome KGB, finally embraced that nickname, and is the reason why Melody won't take any shit and works to dismantle white supremacy. Spiritual but not religious. Melody loves to laugh and sometimes cry, and like me, they curse a lot. So follow their shenanigans. Their Insta is in the links. And then I also have Diamond Hill. Diamond is a birth worker in northern New Jersey. Diamond is the parent of 4 daughters, Jaida 14, Naiyma. Okay, I just want to make sure I'm saying the baby name right. 12, Amina 6, and Nairobi 3. They are a family who believes in raising free Black children through gentle parenting, natural parenting, and unschooling. Y'all better hit them cash apps. And then last, but certainly not least, Dr. Shamell Bell is a mother, community organizer, dancer, choreographer, documentary filmmaker, and professor who received their PhD in culture and performance from UCLA's World Arts and Cultures Dance Department. They are currently teaching at Dartmouth College in the Department of Theater and in the African American Studies program. They use street dance as radical joy, healing, and team building, and often teaches alongside her 9-year-old son, Seijani, who focuses on meditation and mindfulness. I just want to say welcome to everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
And thank you for having us, DiDi.
Oh,
yeah.
Thanks. I appreciate it. So I know that Rish might have to hop off. So I want to, if it's okay with everybody, I want to just ask how y'all are feeling right now. Let's just do a check-in because I feel like sometimes we do the work, right? It doesn't matter like who coming, who going. We do the work and we're not checking in on each other. So how y'all feeling right now?
Go ahead, Mama.
I'm good. Everything is good. And if it's not, it'll be good. It'll be all right.
Okay.
Right.
Everything's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not stressing anything, so everything is fine.
Well, I'm gonna tell you that I am not okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't want to pretend to be okay. I'm gonna take this moment to not be okay and be okay with not being okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then also at the very same time saying that I'm more okay than I thought I would be in a situation like this, and that I believe that I've always been prepared for a moment like this. So yeah, I am taking inventory of where I need to heal and allowing the Rona to be the space that kind of ushers me into this rebirth.
Yeah.
I think I'm gonna I feel a combination of things. I agree with Dr. Shamell. I'm okay, right? But that's because I'm forcing myself to be okay, right?
Yeah.
I don't have I can't break down right now. Not right now, not today. Maybe later on tonight after I put the children to sleep, I can go and have a cry about all the different experiences I'm having, the fears that I'm feeling, right? Everybody projecting their fears onto me, even though I'm not afraid. I'm not worried. I'm careful and I take precautions and I'm trying to stay safe, but I can't do it all, right? You know, some of us, we don't have the luxury. It's a luxury right now to get out the house and be safe at the same time, right? And a lot of us don't have that luxury. We have to be in the house. We have small children. They can't go out and play. We can't take them to the park. The park is roped off. It's closed off. They're in the house. We driving each other crazy. We tired of looking at each other. And, and you know, anytime that I can get them away from home for a little while, I have a safe space that I can bring them to, where they can go play outside and I'm not worried about anything happening to them or worried about diseases getting to them because we're away from people. We're out in the country. We're, you know, but you know, it's that space in between home and there, you know, getting there. How are we going to get there? You know, is everybody going to be clean when we get in the car? And do I have to worry about disease? You know, it's a lot to balance and weigh. So I'm doing the best I can. I think I'm doing an okay job. I think I'm doing an excellent job. But you know, we all just trying to keep our head above water right now. So
I definitely understand what you're saying. Like when I say that I'm okay, like I feel like I'm okay because I'm in tune with what I'm feeling. And I'm not letting other people's, like you said, fear put me in a place where I am so like fearful that I can't move. You know what I mean? So for me, it's like I'm okay because I'm tapping into all the feelings that come in whenever they come in, and it is what it is.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think about excuse me, I think about like how, you know, I once gave a keynote and I was like, you know, I hate the word resilience because Black folks have had to be resilient since long before Harriet Tubman. You know what I'm saying? The newspapers are listed Harriet Tubman as a resilient person. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and aren't we tired? And so, you know, I'm like, I'm not doing nothing. I'm going to take care of myself. I'm going to engage in self-care. And I find myself organizing. I sneak at the organizing. I'm like, no, I'm not doing this, you know what I'm saying? And then like I find myself doing this show, or I find myself, you know, and I think, you know, I've been telling people, you know, I'm fine, but I've cried, like just broken down in tears several times, you know. And you know, my child is coming back home today. I have not seen my baby since the 25th of March, you know what I'm saying? And so it's just a lot. So I appreciate the check-in because I think it's important for us to let each other know where we're doing. And so many people are in the comments resonating, you know, and I encourage y'all, if y'all have the spoons or y'all have the time to connect with other parents who are hopping up in these comments today, saying that, you know, yes, they agree, like, and it's what we're saying is sitting right there.
Right.
Thank y'all for that. I want to talk about a lot of us have trauma, right? And that's why we're sitting here saying we're fine, but not fine. But I know what fine look like. I don't know what fine looks like, right? A lot of us have our personal traumas, but we also have this ancestral generational trauma that like we still, you know, when we heal ourselves, we heal our ancestors. I've seen that so many times in different quotes in different ways. And so like, how can we heal ourselves? Like, what does healing look like alongside of our current parenting status? Like, many of us are in different stages of healing, right? I know. I was like, Shamell, we doing this?
Listen.
So does anyone want to take it first? Reese, you got something?
Yeah, I'll say it's hard. Like, anybody who says, you know, okay, everything is not just a challenge. Things are many things at one time, right? Some things are easier for people to flow through than others. And parenting and balancing my personhood and my selfhood, that's been a challenge for me. I've had to like fight for space to just be me and just, you know what I'm saying, where I can separate from my children a little bit for a little while and experience myself in ways that I can't when I'm with them, you know, all the time. Mentally, spiritually, physically, the whole nine. And the only way that I have found for me that's effective to help me still work on the things that I acknowledging my stuff and sifting through it and mature, you know, nurturing it, is to take the space that I need. And that's a luxury too, you know, that's, you know, and it shouldn't be like that. We should have enough sisterhood around us where we can support each other in that way, right? And I don't have a whole lot of people around me that can support me in that way, but luckily I have my mother nearby. My partner's mother lives nearby, and they both will take the children, you know, maybe once a month, once every other month, and I can kind of get some time to myself. So whatever you could do to get some time and space alone, even if it's at midnight when the children are in the bed, and you can stay up a little bit and journal. If you could wake up at 5 or 6 in the morning and take a bath with some herbs or whatever you need to do, you know, just find a way to take space for yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I learned.
Go ahead, Diamond. Okay. Go ahead.
So I learned self-care from my mom. She would like self-care alongside of us. So like we'll be coloring or doing whatever, and she does what she needs to do for herself. Just even painting her toes or drawing or whatever. So how I'll practice self-care is my kids will be doing whatever because I homeschool. So my kids are always around me. So I'm able to paint while they're doing whatever. Like even now they're having their self-care moments, and I'm able to have a minute just to be here. And
I was thinking about something Reese had said, and I felt that so much because I don't have a lot of people around me to support me. I'm a transplant, you know, so I left my native city because of education, and I find that the people I do have here is a very protective, very small pocket, and I do feel like I lean on them too much. So sometimes I'd be like, nope, no, I can't ask, right? And I know this resonates with people because I know they feel like this about their mom or their grandparents or their sisters or whatever, whoever is around you in your support system. You like, nah, I don't want to lean, you know what I'm saying? But I think it's okay to push past that uncomfortableness. I just had a conversation with my best friend, and I was like, I know you aggravated by what I'm about to ask you, and you can say no, but I'm also currently aggravated. So let's, like, you know, since we need each other's support system, let's push through that aggravation, because it's only going to serve to further aggravate us. And like, let's get this done. Let's pick up my child. Like, you know, so thank you for saying that.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's like I am super intentional. My son is older and he's 11. And so for me, it's been a lot easier now since he's 11 and he's a little bit more self-sufficient. Plus, we are polar opposites, meaning like I'm an extrovert. I like to go out. I like to socialize. And he's like, this whole thing is ideal for him. He's like, I don't have to go outside. Awesome. Like, you're not forcing me to go out. That's fine. So he has no problem spending hours and days and weeks in the house and not ever seeing anyone else. You know, so that's cool. But part of my self-care has always been like going out and socializing, dancing. I was thinking about this the other day. Like, why am I kind of struggling a little bit with this whole like isolation thing? And I said, it's because I love to dance and listen to music and being around other people dancing and listening to music. And I can't really do that now. Like virtually, yeah, you can do that, but it's not the same. And so me going, that's my self-care to a certain extent, because the baths and the nails and or journaling, like I can do that even when he's here, because he generally like only comes out to tell me something silly about Fortnite and then he goes back in his room. Versus, you know, me like, oh, I need to go and just be around other people and kind of like get that energy, you know. And I'm struggling with that right now. Like, okay, and I want to dance. Like, I want to dance and I want to, you know, sing to the top of my lungs and all of it. I'm like, I can do that, but it's not the same when you can do it around people that you know, friends that you're really close with or whatever, you know?
Right. I mean, I feel what you're feeling right now because, you know, I'm a dancer and that's kind of like how I do my healing process. Like, healing to me has been, and even theorizing. Are you all hearing the feedback or is that just me? Do you all hear feedback?
Yeah, I hear the feedback too. Somebody has the broadcast up on Facebook on their device. That's what it is.
You can have the broadcast up, but if you just minimize your volume on your phone, it works perfectly because that's how I'm making a comment.
Okay. So I just closed it out because I think I might have opened it. The feedback was me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Wait, I just felt like Teddy Riley, y'all. Baby, face. Oh my gosh. Okay, yeah. So for me, dancing has been the way that I lived. And so that's how I got my PhD. I literally have a PhD in dance pretty much. And so it's been difficult for me to not dance and knowing that it's a part of my healing right now. And I've been talking to DiDi about it. Everybody hits me up every week because I curate, you know, things like this. And they're like, what are you doing? Are you doing a workshop? You know, I was traveling weekly doing things. And I literally had to tell people, if you see I have this gift that I've been showing people of this little fox in a straitjacket. I'm like, no, I need to go full crazy right now. Like, I need to not do anything. And that is taking care of myself right now. And I was wondering why I'm actually separated from my son right now. He's in California with his dad. And I, you know, was the primary parent for 9 years of his life until, you know, I got this job at an Ivy League and it was an opportunity. So I've been sharing custody with his father. And I was thinking, like, I came to Georgia for a conference and then never went to the conference because of the Rona and then never left. And for me, that was really difficult. That was like March 11th. And this process that I'm going through of, like, you were talking about self-care. For me, self-care was getting to the deepest and darkest and the shadow parts, and to literally feel like I was losing my mind in order to now come to where I'm at, where I can see the generational trauma. I can see, you know, I'm able to tell my mom, like, I am off this victimhood cycle. It does not serve me. Thank you for the lessons, but I am moving forward. Are you coming with me or not? And that is not going to be given to my son. So had I not been in this place where I literally had to be stripped of everything, my apartment's at Dartmouth, I'm paying over $2,000. I don't even want to talk about it, for an apartment that I'm not there. I'm not with my son in California, and I'm here in Atlanta with a duffel bag. I feel like a duffel bag boy, you know? And I know I have all the references, y'all see in a second. I have no good sense, y'all. But that idea of when I started to this unbecoming, right? Michelle Obama was talking about becoming. And I'm like, nah, I feel like I'm in a process of unbecoming everything that this society told me that I should be, and becoming who it is that I really am. And that is what is the key to my self-care and my, you know, healing So yeah, that's how I feel.
Thank you. And
we're evolving. I just want to say that we're evolving. That's what we're doing. This is like a period of evolving and learning more about ourselves, so we don't pass on the other traumas and mess to our.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's funny that you say that, because during this time, speaking of mothers, I'm sure we'll probably tap into that. But speaking of, this was the time that like everything blew up with my mom. Like it's kind of like been building. I'm 40 years old. I turned 40 on March 18th. And so it's been building up all of these years. And as soon as like, we don't even live in the same city, but as soon as like right before I turned 40, it was like, boom. And I was just like, okay, this needed to happen. Like the old me would have been so frustrated and angry, and it's like, why can't you see me? And da 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 da. And I still feel like that to a certain extent. But also during this time, I'm like, okay, that had to happen. Like it had to happen.
Absolutely.
And because it had to happen, so now I have all of this time to really process all of this. You know what I mean? And so, yeah, like, oh man, I get it.
I just told that to the Lyft driver today. He was like, we were riding on my way to my mother's, and he was like, I don't know where all this energy is coming from. I be up all night. I can't sleep. Yeah. And my doctor prescribed me sleeping pills. I said, which one is it? And he told me the name of it. And I'm like, be careful with those, because they one of the side effects is suicidal thoughts. Get you some chamomile tea and some lavender oil, all right? And just do that. Try that for a little bit. But you right now, you so used to going. Now that you slowing down, parts of you that you never knew were there are starting to wake up. Yeah. Right? You I can't sleep at night either. It's parts of me that have been dormant for all these years, and they starting to wake up. And so
look now,
you know, we going through a period where we clicking on. Shit is activating, right? And so, you know, capitalism keeps you on a wheel, right? Capitalism keeps you, huh?
Oh, sorry. I thought you were finished. I heard when you said activating, I also heard falling off. Like things are also falling off of us as time in order to activate.
And the what was that? That's pretty much it. Basically, you just said it. Things are falling away and stuff is turning on, because things are falling away, because we're not on the hamster's wheel, right? We're not having to clock in at 7 o'clock in the morning. We're not having to perform persona, you know, for hours and hours and hours out the day. Some of us don't even know who our real self is anymore, right? We've been on this for so long. We don't even know who we are. So now that we're starting to learn ourselves and learn different parts of us, we like, okay, so I'm not code switching no more. I'm not XYZ no more. Like it's a wrap. So, you know, it's a really beautiful time. It's scary if you let it be scary. And it's also beautiful if you can vacillate between the two, you know, and figure out.
Now we have like the mental energy to just do what we need to do and to focus on what we really need to focus on and look at the person in the mirror. We don't have to put on those costumes no more, because now we don't have to. We can't. We're in the house. So we have to focus. We have to look in the mirror and focus.
I just want to uplift two things. No. Please don't apologize, because you know it's just a lot of feedback and stuff like that, whatever. So we missing out the moments where someone has finished, and so I apologize that I cut you off, but I wanted to uplift two things. Number one, let me say this first before I say the second thing, is that not all of us are having the opportunity to explore ourselves either. Like, you know what I'm saying? A lot of us are still having to work and figure out what that means working from home. My boss just emailed me yesterday for the second time in a row and was like, can you come into the office? And you know, I'm Black. So I was like, for what? And he was like, like, I was like, what do you know, I said it a little polite. I was like, what do you need me to possibly come into the office for? And he was like, oh, there's stuff in your inbox that's piling up. And I'm like, who needs to see it right now? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, so that's the first thing I'll say, is that I would really love for us, you know, I get it that each person is speaking from their personal experience, but to hold space for those of us who are out here working at Target and at, you know, grocery stores, and I work in social services. So like, we don't get no rest for the weary, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
The second thing is that I wanted to uplift is that my boo just joined us. So I just want to just give, just, you know, you do have a short bio, so I'll read it so people know who's joining us. Nina Monei currently resides in Seattle, where they were born and raised.
Yes.
Mom of one, poor, Black, queer, and angry as hell, a former early learning teacher and current children's rights activist and advocate, a writer, a blogger. Nina loves sushi, rap, R&B, Rihanna, reminding people that Black folks are rightfully angry and that white should pay what they owe. Welcome, Nina.
Hey, sorry I'm late. I'm
No apologies.
Pacific Standard Time, and I also had to fight Zoom a little bit, but I'm here.
So,
and to what you were saying, I was thinking
ahead.
the same thing when they were saying we have this time to get to know ourselves. That's not something that we all have, unfortunately. Like for myself, my daughter and I are homeless. We've been couch surfing since September. We've been staying with family. We've been staying with my abuser, and being quarantined in the middle of that has been hell for us. So it's like, it's been a matter of not knowing where we're going to stay every night. It's been a matter of not feeling safe in any environment, because like when we're staying with my mom, she didn't take it seriously. She was like, they canceled this. She's a school bus driver, and they canceled the rest of the school year. And she was like, well, I'm out of work and I can't stay in the house all day. And so she's running back and forth from place to place. She's having parties and stuff, inviting the family over for family dinner. She's like, we finally have this free time, we should hang out. And so for her, it was just like time to reconnect with her friends, which is valid for her because she doesn't get that time during the school year. But for me, it was like, I'm worried about my safety. I'm worried about getting sick. I'm worried about my daughter getting sick. She has a compromised immune system. And so it's been more of like trying to find space where I can feel like I'm safe, and I can feel like my daughter's safe, and I can feel like our needs are being met. And so it's been like, we're fortunate that we haven't, I think my daughter may have had it. They wouldn't test her for it. But she was really, really sick for pretty much the entire month of February. She was throwing up. She had diarrhea. She had body aches. She had everything but a high fever. She had a low-grade fever, but she didn't have a high fever. And the reason I remember that is because I told them all her symptoms. That she had this really dry like cough that rattled her chest. And I was worried at first that she had pneumonia, because she's had pneumonia before. And they were just like, well, it always presents with a dry cough and a high fever. And I was like, that's not true though, because you had to test people positive who were asymptomatic. So how can you say it always presents?
Yeah, they're saying now that's not accurate anymore.
But they said, I called her the nurse line for our insurance agency, and they said that we needed to refer her to her pediatrician and get a referral from her pediatrician for her to get tested. And when I called her pediatrician, because they weren't in the office, and they said that they wouldn't test her without a high fever. And by the time I found out from other people I could demand they put that in writing, it was too late. But anyway, so we had to battle through that, and we had to battle through that with no stable housing. And it's just been a matter of trying to survive this for us. So I'm fortunate, I had some really good luck in the last week or so. I made a GoFundMe campaign that did really well, and we're looking into getting into our own housing. But yeah, but it's been hell. And the last few months have been really bad for us. And I'm just fortunate that they're starting to turn around, and they're hopefully going to be very good for us going forward.
Thank you for sharing that, Nina, because just all the narratives being brought forth to the table are super important. The question I had asked before you joined was our relationship between intergenerational trauma and how we parent, like how are we healing alongside of our current parenting status. But I want to kind of like delve into something that you talked about, because it's actually on the list, right? Of my questions. So there's been an uptick in unreported domestic violence cases. It's already underreported in Black and Brown communities. And we also know that domestic violence doesn't necessarily mean physical abuse. As in Nina's case, It could be verbal. It could be just a toxic ass environment. It could be someone you have this like fucked up relationship with, and like you're still having to navigate this with. So what are some tips that y'all would suggest to promote safety or safer situations during the midst of this pandemic? And we're in quarantine, and how do we protect not only ourselves but our children?
Yeah, so I actually talked a lot about this. I had hosted a webinar, and it was mainly for survivors, but there was also just tips in general. And I think the biggest thing is like when you have, and this isn't going to fit for everyone. Let's be clear. Like this is not going to fit for everyone. This, domestic violence in general is not a one size fits all. So even the solutions or circumstances are, not for everyone. But I talked a lot about just trying to find a safe space if you can, right? And that can look like different things for different people. Some people, their safe space is a shelter if they have access to that. For others, it's like trying to find a safe space amongst like family and friends. And Nina, I can definitely relate to like couch surfing. I had to do that a lot prior to me moving to Charlotte. But I rather had did that than to just kind of live where I was living originally. You know what I mean? Like it just was a lot. But as in terms of just like domestic violence, there's that. Then there's like, how do we create these minuscule, minor safe spaces even when we are in a toxic environment? You know what I mean? And I recall one time, because I'm a survivor myself, and I recall one time where I had to lock myself in the bathroom because I just needed that safe space. And I ran no tub as if I was taking a bath, but I really just needed to be alone because it just was so much and so heavy. And it just was taking a huge toll on me emotionally. And it was hard. Like, it's hard because sometimes, because of the stigma domestic violence has, people don't seek help, and they don't tell their friends, and they don't tell their family, and they're not believed, you know what I mean? Or it's minimized. I definitely experienced that, where it was minimized. Or the other thing was when I was in it, most of my close friends weren't even in the same city that I was in. So if I was in the city that I had my best friends in, it would have been a lot easier, where I can just say, this is what's going on. We packing our shit and we coming. And it wouldn't be a second thought. But I didn't have that, I didn't have that access. So when I finally told someone and I reached out to them, they came and they were supportive. But the one thing I remember her telling me, and I just constantly replayed that over my, in my head, was, no one's going to save you. You are going to have to save yourself. And that was hard because it's like, I feel like part of me got into the situation because I wanted someone to save me, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? I wanted this man to come in and, save me. Mm-hmm. And so I had to learn all the skills, all the techniques, build all the community in order to save myself. And not saying I did it alone, but I still had to say, I have to do this on my own. And I had to rebuild community because I didn't have a community out here that I could turn to. And once I did, and once I realized like I could do this on my own, it slowly became easier and easier, because it wasn't initially when I first decided to leave at all. At all, it wasn't easier. So I make these pockets of like self-care and self-love and really defining what that is, because I was not taught self-love. I was not taught what self-worth looks like. I had to practice forgiving myself for even being in that situation, because there's a whole lot of guilt, especially when you have a child. It's a whole lot of guilt with that. So it wasn't just one thing that I did. Like, I had to really get to the root of what does self-love look like for me? How do I show up for that every day? What is that? What is my self-worth? What do I feel like I'm worthy of accepting and having and experiencing from a partner? So there's no one thing. It's a multiple of things, and you just have to kind of like find what works for you. And a toolbox doesn't just have one tool. So we have to build up that toolbox so that we have the tools that we need to fight every day. And that's fighting ourselves sometimes, and that's fighting others too. You know?
Thank you, Melody. Rish, did you want to offer something?
Sure. Abuse comes in a whole bunch of different forms, right? Some of us have experienced physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, whatever it is. If you are not aware of what your boundaries are, the first thing you got to do is you have to set boundaries for yourself, right? Once you know what your and it's hard to do that without acknowledging that you deserve boundaries first, right? So first acknowledge that these are the boundaries that I deserve. I don't deserve anybody taking my money from me, right? I don't deserve anybody putting their hands on me. I don't deserve anybody doing XYZ. Say, this is what I'm willing to, I can't take this no more. These are my boundaries. This person clearly cannot, stop crossing them. They keep crossing these boundaries. So we have to figure out what the next move is from here, right? And so I know it's easier said than done. I gotta go, I gotta get out of here. And it's like, homeless shelters are closed now, so it's hard to even get in right now with the current state of things. But if you have, sometimes there are resources for women through the Salvation Army, right? Through different local organizations. You got to find out which local organizations are that focus on helping women with children, single women, women who are being abused. A lot of times they require that you have a police report, so it'd be difficult, because you'd be like, I don't want to call the cops, I don't want to get, police involved, I don't want to get the law involved. Get the law involved. All right, you come first. Put yourself ahead of everything. Put your needs ahead of everything. Nothing comes ahead of you. Nothing. So, that's my 2 cents. I don't like to, it's hard for me to speak on it, because everybody's situation is different. But whatever resources are in your local area, please find out what they are. Set your boundaries and never, ever let nobody cross them again. Right. And as soon as they start exhibiting behaviors like they interested in crossing them, a voice, look, these are my boundaries. It seems like you're trying to cross it. And if you are, we can't, this is going to have to cut, we can't continue on right here down this path. Cause I can't have my lines crossed. I will not be disrespected, so that's my 2 cents. I hope that helps.
Thank you, Rish.
I also want to say, sometimes you got to put somebody in your shoe. Sometimes you got to use.
Yes, I meant to say that.
All your resources.
Work. Get their drawers. Mm-hmm.
Make sure you use all your resources. If you call them ancestors.
Yes.
And protect yourself. Whatever.
Yes. Yeah.
Whatever means necessary. Protect yourself.
And I just want to say that you should advocate for yourself as fully as you need to, and not let anybody stop you from advocating for yourself. And if that means lying for your survival, lie for your survival.
Yes.
As someone who has dealt with domestic violence shelters, who has been in and out of shelters with my daughter, who has dealt with resources, who has dealt with people who have downplayed my situation, who have told me I don't qualify for certain resources if my situation is not dire enough or extreme enough.
Yes.
They try to make it seem like your abuse isn't valid enough for you to get help, or just whatever you have to do. I have slept in my car with my daughter. I have said that I was sleeping in my car with my daughter when I wasn't, in order to make sure they knew that it was an emergency, that I got housing. I have, lied about how recently the abuse happened. So because if it didn't happen within a certain time frame, they want to tell you that it's okay to lie for your survival. If it's what you need to do to get yourself, do what you need to do to keep yourself safe.
And I also think that we need to advocate for y'all. You know, I think that sometimes we don't have these conversations about how society has a role in this and like our making sure that our basic needs are met, especially when we have situations where we feel like we might need, you know, to go to a shelter and things like that. So I, you know, want to kind of, you know, throw in a conversation around like what if we had a universal basic income so that folks didn't feel like they had to stay in relationships because they didn't have any place to go, right? So these are larger conversations that I think we can be having now to prevent these. And like we need to advocate for situations that I have not technically been in a domestic abuse situation, but I love women. I love Black women, femmes, all folks, you know, so the conversations I have around domestic abuse goes to the root of like my parenting philosophy, like to make sure my basic needs are being met for myself and for my son, and letting him know that, you know, this is seed money. I'm going to have money for you that's not an allowance, that when he graduates, he will have it as an investment. You know, he'll have investment property. So he doesn't have to feel like he has to stay in a relationship. And it goes against, if we're talking about parenting as it relates to domestic abuse, I don't know if y'all still hear people saying, when he get 18, he got to get out of my house. And that's what breeds domestic abuse environments. You know, if you have nowhere to go and your basic needs are not being met, I'm going to be the one that's going to be like, look, you don't need to, you know, stay with this woman because you feel like you don't have nowhere to go. So here, I'm working.
And that's,
go ahead.
That is right on the nail, because honestly, I stayed so long because I did not think financially I could take care of myself on my own. So I stayed way longer than I needed to. And then when, you know, he started the financial abuse, I was like, oh, you know what? This ain't gonna work. Like, you know, and that wasn't like the physical abuse or emotional abuse wasn't what, you know, made me want to leave, but it was the financial abuse. Cause I'm like, hold on.
Right.
Like, you're taking money from you by you not paying your bills, your portion, you're taking money from my child. You know what I mean? And so therefore now I have to work extra hard to make sure his needs are met. Right. Nah, you gotta go. Like, you gotta go. I totally, I want to say, like, I really appreciate the fact that you're saying, even though I didn't experience that, like, I have to show up for those who are, because that's so important. That is so important. And I, you know, I honestly, I think about this all the time. Like, how can I, maybe there's like some kind of webinar workshop I can do, like how people can support their friends who are experiencing that.
Right. We need to go back to the women of Brewster Place. That's what we need.
Yes.
Singing. DiDi, I gotta go.
Okay, Reach.
All right.
I hope that you have a great day.
It was so nice meeting y'all.
Yes, Reach.
All right. I'm gonna add y'all on Facebook and whatnot.
Please.
All right. Peace.
Yeah, we definitely need that, you know, because that stigma is what gets people not to support, you know what I mean? Like, at all. So I beat it in people's heads every chance that I get. Like, I asked this, just recently I had asked this woman to ask her like HR director connects and stuff about like, you know, what they think of domestic violence and how does that show up in their workplace or whatever. And a lot of them was just like, yeah, it doesn't relate to me. And I'm like, actually, it does, because your company's losing millions every year. So let's get into that. But we need advocates, just like we have advocates and allies for domestic violence victims, survivors. We need that too. We need those who are going to be our allies and be our advocates and still, you know, support us too and be vocal about it.
Well, I'm here, Melody. I always talk about it. That's why I have this kind of line of thinking. And that is why I have these conversations with my son. I literally have conversations when my son was 8. Like, these are the things, no, you did not earn this money, but I have this money that I'm going to give you so that you can have a place to stay, so that, and you will also get a car. You're not getting a car because you quote unquote earned a car. You're getting a car because it's going to set up your future so that you will be stable, you know? So I'm having conversations about this because I literally say, because I don't want you, I know this may be bad, but I tell my son I'm not raising a fuck boy. And I tell him that, one, because I don't want him to think all the emotional, if he chooses to be with a woman, or, you know, I don't want him to have all the emotional labor to be on a Black woman. So we have these deep conversations where it's like, I see there's something that he won't do to his father or say to his father, but in, you know, the teachers in his life or with me in his life, he will do all of this emotional, like where I have to do the emotional labor. And I'm not saying emotions are bad. I always want him to go, you know, through that with me. But from this age, I teach him, you know, always, you know, why are you not sharing this with the men in your life? And, you know, these types of things. So I think that once we teach our children about domestic abuse and teach them how our basic needs can be met and how we can all advocate, I think that's where the root of it really starts.
I agree. I'd say all the time that everything starts in childhood. Like so much of our trauma, so much of our everything that we're navigating as adults, was shaped by our childhoods, and also so much of our personality starts in childhood. So I'm very, very. I mean, I'm an early learning teacher, and you know I advocate for children, and so I spend so much time with kids that I can see the foundations of certain behaviors already being laid. And that's why I try to be like, I'm very meticulous in like my parenting with my daughter, and in being intentional as possible, and being as open and communicative as possible, in uplifting her autonomy. Like for myself, I have to, you know, check myself when I'm infringing on her autonomy. I get constant fights with my family for things about infringing. My brother didn't talk to me for 6 months because I told him she doesn't have to speak to him at family functions. Like, he came up to her while she was drinking her juice, and he said hi, and she said, I just want to drink my juice. And he was like,
listen.
And he was like, I think that's rude and disrespectful for a child to say to an adult. And I was like, she just wanted to drink her juice. I don't know what you wanted from me or her. Like, so I think teaching children to be, you know, to own their own bodies, but also to understand the relationships with other people, to understand the space they occupy in the world is so important. And I also think that as far as, you know, DiDi's original question about like what advice I have for people who are dealing with, you know, the fallout from that and the ramifications of, you know, abusive environments, when she originally asked that question, like I believe it was Shamell said, you know, the community needs to be better advocates. My first thought was, I don't really have much advice for survivors, but I do feel like people need to be mindful of the way they engage survivors. People need to be mindful of the way that you're engaging people in your life who you know are in environments that aren't safe for them. I feel like for myself personally, a big thing with me is if someone asks me for something and I have the capacity to give, I give it. No questions asked. I don't need to know what you need it for, what you're doing with it. I don't need to police you for it. Like if I have it to give, I'm going to give it to you. And that goes from money to a place to stay. When I've had people come stay with me, it's not about, oh, you got to earn your keep and you got to wash the dishes because you're staying here and you got to do X, Y, and Z. Because if someone is staying with you, that means they're literally homeless. They don't have anywhere else to go. And having been in homeless shelters, having been homeless, I know the stress of trying to figure out your own survival while people are trying to make you dance and prove that you're worthy of having a home. So I feel like that kind of compounds the shame of that survivors already have when we're reaching out to family, when we're reaching out to friends, and they're like, oh, you can stay with me, but you got to prove to me that you're worth, you know, like I'm already dealing with that. Like that's what I'm trying to get away from. Exactly. So I think being mindful of how we treat people who are in situations that aren't safe or aren't healthy or aren't ideal for them, like, is important. I think not downplaying people's experiences, because I know it's common for people to be like, well, you know, they didn't hit you, or it could have been worse, or, you know, X, Y, and Z. I'm sorry, does somebody else have something I wanted to say?
No, that was my preach.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure I wasn't getting off on a tangent. But yeah, basically just showing up and creating that space in a way that's about what the person you're trying to help needs, and not what makes you feel big or good.
Thank you for saying that, Nina, because I just want to uplift your story. Not for any kind of, I also agree that I don't need people to like relive their trauma and share it whenever I advocate for folks. But it makes me think of the time that, you know, I heard, you know, this conversation about resources. Make sure you reach out to resources. I know what it feels like, and I'm pretty sure all of us, I'm like looking at all of y'all, all of us know what it feels like when you feel like your back is against the wall, and sleeping on a family's couch where your abuser also lives there is not okay. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I remember there were programs I was pregnant with Egypt, and there were programs I did not qualify for. Before I was famous, I was just a small local activist, right? There were programs I did not qualify for because people were like, well, you do Lyft and you have a car. And I was like, okay, well, what am I supposed, like, this happened to me. I can't live where I'm living anymore, you know? And it was like wild, like even like shelters and places, the shelters had all sorts of rules. I had a friend of mine who was like, well, you can't be picky. Yes, the fuck I can. There was a shelter that was like Our Lady of the Holy Sacrament or something like that. And they wanted me to like pay penance for the fact that I was unmarried and pregnant. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, so yes, the fuck I can have choices. There is dignity for people who are cash poor. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I think about when we have these conversations, the only reason why I'm uplifting Nina's story is because a lot of times we get weird. And I'm talking about us as an entire community. It's like, we know that these are the problems plaguing our community. I know many of us have either been the person sleeping on someone's couch or had to house someone sleeping on our couch. And we just need to continuously, I love what Nina said, that, you know, like, don't make that person feel like shit, because at the end of the day, what you're doing is passing judgment. And I know what I'm talking about. I have been on someone's floor giving them money towards rent and still feel like I gotta bust my ass and earn my keep here. And that's not a good look. And the only reason why I am even marginally stable today, because my rent is up there too. The only reason why I'm marginally stable today is because I have convinced white people that they do owe us, because I would not have to necessarily engage in any of this labor, or, you know, our families wouldn't be broken down, whether it's a nuclear family or whether it's our extended family, would not be broken down had it not been for their ancestors. And a white woman said to me, I want to give you a grant. And I was like, a what? I didn't 2016, did not know what a grant was. And she was like, I want you to be able to mother the way that white women mother. I had never heard no shit like that before in my life. And I got a $10,000 grant, which, and you know, $10,000, if you think about it, yes, I would love to have $10,000 right now, but it's not a lot of money. That's like 3.5 months of working at Target. You understand what I'm saying? Like, it's not a lot of money. It's not going to take you nowhere. But she paid my rent. I think it was like 75% of my rent for the place that she was like, if you find me an apartment, find yourself an apartment, I will pay your rent. And I think that more white folks need to think about how to utilize their credit, how to, you know what I'm saying? Because at the end of the day, this is the shit that we suffering with. We're afraid to leave these fucked up situations because we're like, it's a financial thing. And it's like, oh, well, you know, damn, now I'm in the situation with this person, whether it's a parent or a friend or a roommate or even a romantic partner. I'm in this fucked up situation with them and they've been paying half the bills. So now if I kick them out or if I leave, the whole relocation thing is going to cost me a grip. You know, so I just want to say thank you. I think many of us know what you're going through, and I hope that your story inspires someone to go ahead and drop a year worth of rent on you. You understand what I'm saying to you? Like, and I mean, like, you know, GoFundMe's can go viral and all this shit, but if they can fucking support a fucking dog who's about to have cancer removed and radiation treatments or whatever, then why the fuck do Black lives not matter? Like, don't even get me started, y'all. Can we go into the next topic?
Yes.
I just want to touch on when she was talking about children's body, just children's presence, children understanding that they own their body. So like with my older kids, my 14-year-old, my 11-year-old, and my 6-year-old, I don't post them on social media because I believe that they're in charge of their image. So when I post them, I'm creating a narrative of who they are and what they are. So I don't post them without their permission. And like, they fully understand what is going on in social media. So I just wanted to touch on that.
Okay. Relatable. My son charges me. If I want a picture of him that's like a face in it, he's like, yeah, that's gonna cost you like $5. Like he's charging me. So now I do foots and like back images. Like I'm like, I'm not paying you. So
I love it. I love
so
it.
I like do behind, like you'll see like a shadow of him. It's so ridiculous. Like, but yeah, like he's all about, and it's funny because I didn't really have to teach him. It kind of was instinctively for him. Like my body's my body. I am who I am. And so really, and I think, I can't remember who it was that said that, like he taught me how to mother. He taught me how to parent. You know what I mean? It wasn't something that I'm teaching him how to be a child. No, he taught me. He expressed his needs. He showed me, like, even when we decided to go the route of unschooling and self-directed education, like it was based off of the fact that I saw that he constantly kept butting heads with structured curriculum. He kept bumping heads with his teachers. He kept bumping heads with people who try to put him in a box and tell him, this is what you need to know. You know what I mean? And so as I saw that, I was like, okay, we can't keep going on like this. You know what I mean? Because he's stressed out. I'm stressed out. And I was just like, all right, we need to shift this. So he's the one that taught me, this is how you mother me, Mom.
Yep.
This is how you show up as a mother for me. And I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, my son, he dropped out of kindergarten. He was just like, aren't you a teacher, Mom? I was like, ooh, I am a PhD student. But yeah, he definitely, that is why we started unschooling, because I saw how him, being identified as being on the autism spectrum. And they said, in kindergarten, we pick our battles with him and those types of things, and constantly having, yes, pick your battle with a 5-6-year-old. Yeah. And constantly not doing any work and, not wanting to do what the structure they, wanted to. He's like, no, I'm going to do this. He was polite. He was like, no, thank you. I'm going to do this, and they just could not take it. So yeah, I completely resonate with what you're saying. And also wanted to tell both Melody and Nina that if you need advocates, I would love to, have more of these conversations about how we can be advocates, and also talk about, yes, white people can give us some reparations, but how about as a society, we make sure that everyone's basic needs are met so that you won't be in those types of situations and environments. So I think this is the time that we can have these conversations to make sure that everyone's needs are met.
Absolutely. And I was going to say, Melody, if it's okay with you, I'd like to reach out to find out more about unschooling, because I'm considering the same things with my daughter. She starts kindergarten in the fall, and I've already been in fights with the preschool about them telling me my daughter is rude or bad or challenging because she says no. Like, I've always taught her that it's okay to say no, or to say that she doesn't want to do something. They're like, when we tell her it's time to take a nap, she'll tell me that she doesn't want to. And I'm like, okay, well, she doesn't want to. Like, I don't know what more, again, it's another situation where I don't know what more you want me to do. You want me to make her take a nap? Even with her, like, even with her saying I don't want to, I try to explain to people there are certain things that, like, I don't have the language and I don't have the structure and I don't have the opportunity to have be not optional. When we have to go out of the house, we have to go out of the house. So if it's time to go and she tells me she doesn't want to, then I'm like, okay, I understand you don't want to, but this is the reason why we have to, and we have a conversation about why we have to go, even if she doesn't want to. But I'm never gonna punish her for saying she doesn't want to do something. Nobody punishes me for saying I don't want to do something. And so I'm already seeing, like, the challenges and the pushback with schools from them not comprehending how a little Black girl, especially being in Seattle, how a little Black girl has the nerve to say she doesn't want to do something.
Right.
So I feel like we might end up going the unschooling route too.
Yeah, I'm unschooled.
I started unschooling because of my 11-year-old. She is very vocal. She's a very vocal Black girl. She tells you exactly what she needs, exactly what she wants, and you, like, she's gonna look you in your eye and you're gonna understand her. She is just that type of child. She's so strong-headed and she is determined. And so when she doesn't like something, she's just not gonna do it. And the way she learns is completely different from the way my 14-year-old learns. And so I can't teach them the same way. So with my 14-year-old, I can teach her the traditional way. She can have books galore and she'll learn perfectly fine. But with her, she has to learn differently. And her way is just her way. You can tell her a million times in a way to do it. And she'll figure it out the way she does it. And that's just, it is what it is. And I have to understand that as long as she got the right answer, I have to just let it go. That is just one of the fights.
Same.
Yeah.
My son is the same way. Like, when I tell you we're so different, like, we're so different because I did traditional. I learned a little bit more traditional, whatever, but he's never really been that traditional learner. You know, like, he can watch a video and he gets it. You know, meanwhile, I'm like, I need to read about 3-4 books in order to actually understand. Then I need to write about it. Then I need to tell someone about, like, you know, but him is like, he watches a video, then he'll come talk to me about it. He kind of gets it. You know, he'll put it in practice or whatever. So yeah, it's really about that freedom. You know, it's really about that freedom that we allow them to discover who they are and how they learn and how they just show up in the spaces. And I love seeing it. Like, I love seeing free kids. Oh my God, I love it every time.
Let's talk about what happens when free kids do something outside of the realms of their freedom. There has been a conversation, like Nina's like, okay, let's talk about it. There has been a conversation I have been hosting on my page for some time now. And it's about, it's about disciplining your children, what to do, what not to do. But I've been doing more exploration as to why we discipline our children in the ways that we do. And I've been called out for it. And I want to uplift that, you know, something Shamell and I had parsed back and forth between one another, that at the end of the day, I could make a status today and say, hey, don't be a weirdo, or don't be abusive, don't be this, don't be that, stop hitting your kids, right? If we don't talk about the reason why people are hitting their children, if we don't talk about the fact that we come from a generation of our parents, our grandparents, folks in authority whooping us, or whether it was school, or whether you got beat down during school, after hours, whatever, and that our parents mostly utilize beatings or this type of discipline as a form of punishment and correction, right? So what is the conversation about when we feel we shouldn't talk about it, we just shouldn't do it, right? What is also the semantics between beating, a whooping, a spanking, and getting popped? So I'm gonna leave that to whoever want to pull it first.
Okay, so I like this conversation. I don't hit my kids. I believe that hitting children is just abuse. I don't go up to anyone and hit them because I don't like what they do. I explain my anger and I explain why I'm upset, and we can talk like people. That's what people do. We communicate. I don't feel like there is no reason to hit. Even people be like, oh, why are you reasoning with a 3-year-old? She's 3 and she's having like what she's going through is developmentally normal. It's perfectly okay for a 3-year-old to get frustrated and not be able to communicate and then have a tantrum. You have to explain and you have to reinforce better habits, like talking. Talk to me. Let me know what's going on. And I'll stop there.
Absolutely.
So I am a recovering spanker. And yeah, and so my spanking was rooted in my own abuse. My spanking was rooted in the spankings that I received from my parents and my grandparents. So I was raised by my grandmother, who was from the South, who had a thick old belt that she hung. And granted, she rarely spanked, but when she did, that belt came out. And it was like, I'm gonna get all 3 of y'all, because I don't know, my cousins and I, because I don't know who did it. So everybody getting the spanking. And we laugh and we joke about it, right? We laugh and we joke about it. My dad, who I can count the number of times on one hand that he's actually spanked me. And that was because he wanted to stop that cycle of, of spanking as a way of discipline. So I had to do something really, really up the level for him to actually spank me. And then he would cry after about it. And then my dad would cry about it. You know what I mean? Or we would have a conversation. I think he tried his best with what he knew. And so he would spank me, but then we would have a conversation. You know what I mean? And so with my own son, initially it was very much like, I'm not going to spank. But I'll admit, like, my abuser was very much like, no, spankings are fine, and da-da-da-da-da. And I fed into that, you know? And so I would spank him here and there, and I always felt bad about it. Always felt like horrible about it. And so I remember when, you know, I finally left, I said to my son, spankings are done and over with. We're going to have a conversation about it. We're going to, you know, I learned more about child development. And I just really just got back to what I already knew, but I had set aside. You know what I mean? What I already knew about the damage about it. So I get like, and my mom, like, who didn't raise me, but she would still spank me, and she mainly spanked me because out of frustration. I told you to do something and you did not listen, so now you get a spanking, you know. And that was, but it's so many other options. Like, it's so many other options. And
that's what I feel like most spankings are rooted out of, is we're angry and we can't communicate, and we get upset, frustrated, and then we end up resorting back to old habits like spanking.
Yep.
That's what we know. So that's what we go back to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so you know, I have not laid hands on him in years, and we still have conversations where I'm like, I tell him why I'm frustrated by what he's doing. You know, why am I frustrated by this? How is this making me feel? Because I think sometimes a lot of parents feel like we can't express our feelings to our kids. And I'm like, no, it hurts my feelings when you do this. I feel frustrated when you do this. And I want him to feel the same way. Like, Mom, when you do this, you don't listen to me. You don't this. And he'll tell me that, you know, he'll tell me that. I think that for some of us, we were not taught the tools. For some of us, it is cognitive dissonance. For some of us, it's we don't make that connection. Like, you hear that all the time. Like, well, my parents spanked me and I'm fine. I'm like, are you really? Because you literally had so many unhealthy relationships. Like
your anger issues, you have all types, and you're throwing a tantrum right now.
And you want to hit children. You want to hit small children. So how fine are you really?
Right. And you know, so it's, oh, child, I be seeing some people, it's crazy. I think for me, it's crazy. It's like, even when I did spank, I never felt good about it. So I never justified it. You know what I mean? But people like justify why they're spanking. You know, it's like, because they didn't listen. Well, maybe there's another way you can say it. There's so many other options. But I think since we don't have the tools and we were never taught the tools, we don't necessarily know what alternatives there are.
I think that there's also a conversation about that, you know, because I just be in different circles of different types of Black folk, right? And so I hear a conversation like, oh, if you don't spank your kids, that's why your kid acts white. Like, you know, Egypt is a very free child, like, you know what I'm saying? And people have looked at me in the store because Egypt has developmental disabilities. They have an executive functioning disorder, and too much people, too much noise. Egypt's like, cut that. Like, you know what I'm saying? And I don't feel like I have to explain to people why I don't pull my mom on Egypt. You understand what I'm saying? My mom would be like, don't ask me for nothing. Don't look at nothing. Don't touch nothing. And if you act up, I'm going to beat you in the store and I'm going to beat you when we get home. Right. And so like when Egypt is having a meltdown, I allow it. I will talk to them through it. Egypt could be on the floor. And I really try to like, two things. I either don't go to the store with Egypt because I don't want to deal with it today. You know, that's real. Yeah. Or when Egypt is having a meltdown, I'd be like, it's unfortunate that in a real mess right now when you could regulate your emotions a different way. And Black folks especially will walk by me and be like, you know what I'm saying? Like I'm committing a cardinal sin. You know, you're supposed to beat them in the bathroom or pinch them real quick. Like, you know? And so
same here.
There's a conversation that Shamell and I have been having about having the reason why it's important to have these conversations. I mean, it's important to tell people don't hit, but that's like telling people don't smoke. You do have to provide an education around it. That's like telling people have safe sex. You do have to provide an education around it. This is why we're hitting our children. This is why it's our own traumas popping up, and it's our own upbringing. And even when we know it's wrong, we have not equipped ourselves with the tools to be like, this is how I handle my anger when this little wrote on my wall. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so I think that right, Nina's like, I know that anger. So it's like how, you know, at the end of the day, I think about all the times that I was beat. I had written this entire whole post and then I chopped it in half because I didn't want to go into it on Facebook, you know, and I made a post. It didn't go viral at all, but people were chiming in on how they felt, you know, and what relationships they have now with their parents. You know, and it doesn't have to just be beating. It could be the verbal abuse that you give to your child. I had to think, looking at Egypt the other day, my grandmother had gave them a donut. And in my mind, because, you know, I'm pushing 270. So in my mind, I'm like, no, like, you know what I'm saying? But I should let that child, especially if nothing else is going on. It's just, we have to unpack the shit that we say we're fine about. If everyone is acting like we're they're perfect parents, I mean, bitch, kudos, you get an award. Like, you know what I'm saying? So
yes. Yes.
And speaking of the writing on the wall thing was that resonated with me very heavy because my daughter was coloring on the floors. And so I felt like she needed something she could color on. So I bought like contact paper, like a chalkboard contact paper, and put it all over the wall in her room. I bought her chalk, I bought her markers, I bought her crayons, and I bought her a sketch pad. And I kid you not, the very next day I came in her room and there was crayon all over the wall. And when, like DiDi said, when you have to have that moment where I had to have a come to Jesus moment, because it's like, I literally gave you everything you could need to color where you should be coloring, and now you done deface my wall. But that is the root of it. It's frustration, because when I had my daughter, before I had my daughter, I said I wasn't going to hit her. I was severely abused as a child. There were times when I thought my mother was going to kill me. And my entire, I don't know what it is about my experience. I'm grateful for it. I don't know what it is about my experience where growing up, I always knew what was happening to me was wrong. My siblings who grew up in the same household, they don't see it the way that I see it. They don't see what happened to us as abuse. They don't see being choked and slammed and kicked as abuse. They say we got our asses beat, but they don't feel like we were abused. And they just feel like she went too far sometimes, and they're going to try to go less far with their kids. I don't know what it is about my experience that I always knew it was wrong, and that it wasn't an okay thing to do to kids, and that you should not hurt people and you should not hurt children. And I remember, I tell people I started being a children's rights activist and anti-spanking advocate when I was 9-10 years old, because adults would try to explain this to me and tell me about how hard my mom's life was and about what she had gone through, and about the abuse she had endured from her parents. And I remember I would respond, if she didn't like it being done to her, why would she do it to somebody else? And I just never could accept that as an answer. I was like, she had it done to her and she didn't like it. She's hurting me. It's not okay. And they would be like, she's doing the best that she can. And I'm like, she's not. She could do better, because she could figure out how to not hurt us. She could read some books, she could take parenting classes, she could do whatever she needed to do to figure out how to not hurt us. That was my mentality my entire childhood. No, she's not doing the best she can. She could do better, and she doesn't even care to do better.
Yeah.
As an adult now, with a child of my own, I realized she was doing the best she could. Not the best that could be done. Not the best that anyone has the capacity to do ever. She was doing the best that she had the capacity to do based on her experiences and her knowledge and her resources. Yeah. And yes, there's better that could have been done. And no, we didn't deserve that. But her trauma, her upbringing, the things she had been conditioned to think were normal, shaped her parenting. And that's all she had to work with. And she didn't have whatever I don't know what I had that made me see it differently. I'm grateful for it. I don't know what it is, but I'm forever grateful for it. Whatever it is, she didn't have that. And obviously if she did, she would have saw it differently. And so in my work, in my advocacy, and the conversations I have with people in this space, I always hold that grace that we all have different capacities. We all have different levels of knowledge. We all have different experiences. We all have different things that have shaped who we are as people and have shaped our understandings. And what I know and what I believe and what I've experienced is not what you know, what you believe, and what you experience. And I cannot force you to try to move in line with my experiences and my belief based on my trauma and what I've learned. So I can't be like, just because I understand this and this clicked for me and I had this experience and I know this, everybody should.
Right.
A lot of people, they haven't had that. They don't know that. And so I always hold that grace for Black folk that I know hitting children is wrong, always. And I always say that in all my work, and I die on that hill. All forms of hitting are abuse, it's violence, and we shouldn't do it. But as DiDi said, where do we go from there? What causes it? What impacts it? How do we get here? What are you working with? What are you dealing with? And so I try to come from it as from a teaching and a support position rather than a shaming and a scolding position. It's not I'm better than you, I'm a perfect mom, because I've hit my daughter, and I don't do it, and I haven't done it often. But when I had my daughter, I told myself I was never going to hit her. I was never going to yell at her. I was never going to make her feel the way that I felt. And it's easy enough to say that, but all I know is what I know and what I've experienced. And at that point, all I had experienced was abuse. Right. So when she was 2 and she went through a phase where she was kicking me every time she got upset, and I didn't know how to deal with that, and I got backed into a corner and I was overwhelmed and I was frustrated, the first thing I did was I hit her. I grabbed the bottom of her feet and I slapped her on the bottom of her feet. And I was like, you don't kick me. And the look on her face was just like so betrayed. Like, I can't believe you would do that to me. And in that moment, I was like, okay, that was wrong. That hurt her. That broke a trust. I need to learn some different things to deal with behavior. And so then I started learning more about positive behavioral guidance. I started learning more about, attachment parenting and just different things. And I started working in early learning when I was 16. So I had a lot of coursework and education on early childhood education and behavioral guidance anyway. So I had a nice foundation with that. When I became a parent, I had about 8 years of teaching experience. And so I incorporated a lot of my teaching strategies into my parenting. But again, that's knowledge that I have that other people don't. That's, things I learned in my job and in my reading and in college classes and stuff that everybody doesn't have and doesn't even know to look for or where to look for it. So I think a big part of it is like, because I have one child, and there are days when I'm breaking down crying in the bathroom, like, I don't know how I'm gonna do this. My mom had 6 kids by herself. The older I get, the more experience I have as a mother, the more I understand my mother and that she did the best that she could. And I think part of, again, reaching Black folk and having these conversations is holding that grace, because we don't all have the capacity and the space and the resources that we need to do better than we're doing.
Yeah. Yes, to all of that. Like,
jump in.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, because I feel exactly what you're saying when you felt that you betrayed the trust of your child, because that's exactly what happened with my son at a very young age for him. I'm thinking like maybe 4 or 5. So I see my son now as like a guide, someone that's free and a sovereign being. So he's allowed to, teach me as well. So what ended up happening is him being identified on the autism spectrum, he wanted to eat what he wanted to eat exactly, and it had to come from his brain when he was younger. So, but he doesn't like to wake up early because he goes to sleep late. So I would wake up and just get him the things. All we have in the house is what he likes to eat. But because he did not pick it at that moment in that time, he will not eat it. And so he would starve himself. You try the little, like, well, then don't eat and starve. No, he would literally starve. So we got on to like day 3 of him in the morning, not eating anything and knowing he had a long day. And so I was frustrated, and I went over and I hit him, but it was like more of like a push hit. It was like my frustration. He looked at me like I was a peasant. Let me tell y'all, like he was clutching his pearls. He was like, you know, and I was like so embarrassed because he was young. And I was just like, oh, you know, I'm very, because we had already been, you know, talking about our emotions every night. We always unpacked. And I was just like, I'm really sorry. You made me feel frustrated because, and he looked at me and he stopped me. He's like, I'm laughing because I'm thinking about it. He said, how did I make you feel any kind of way? And it like had a light bulb in my head because he wasn't right, but he wasn't wrong, but he was kind of right. Because how did I get so frustrated that I went off and hit him? How did he make me? He's like, you're not, in his mind, he was like, you're not in control of your own emotions in your body. And then I also had to tell him that you are gaslighting me. You know that you have been doing behaviors every single day, and these behaviors created this. So we've been like working through it together. But you know what happened? Shortly after that, we figured out when he's not listening to me and I've told him something 3 times, he's like, well, you tell me too many things at the same time. You told me to do my shoes and my clothes and my toothbrush all at the same time, and I couldn't remember which one. And so he started to tell me, I can't focus. So I'm like, what are ways I can help him focus? And then we went to meditation. So now when I tell him something, since he was young, that's how he got into meditation and mindfulness, because I'm like, if he's not listening, he probably can't focus or there's something else going on. So I go, do you need to meditate right now? Or when he was throwing a tantrum, and usually I would want to hit him because I'm trying to do a paper, because I'm a single mom in my PhD program, trying to do all these things. And then I stopped and I'm like, why are you doing a tantrum? I realized he wanted some negative attention. He wanted attention, how he could get it any kind of way. And so I looked at him and I said, okay, so what would you like right now? And he wanted cuddle. You know, so I said, well, why don't you tell me you want cuddle time? Why don't we call it cuddle time? So if I'm doing anything and you, instead of having the tantrum, because I'm not going to give you what you want because of that tantrum, but I can and I will always give you cuddle time if that's what you ask. Do you know the next day I ain't get another tantrum? So between meditation and him actually naming what he needed, it kind of switched all of that, because I saw that in my own childhood, or, you know, I wasn't really whooped that much because I was like a super nerd that really didn't do much. And, you know, if I did get a whooping, it was on some real stupid stuff. Like my mom, like, hit me because of a chicken sandwich I didn't get her or something. Like, you know, like that doesn't make sense, you know, but I saw it as, and I wanted to throw this out to you all real quick about, have you heard the conversations on the link to slavery, or the link to, you know, like I put a link in our chat about the post-traumatic slave syndrome. And there's also this paper, or a couple papers, that talked about, you know, Africans were not whipping their children. They saw them as like deities and gods up until like the point white slave masters introduced, you know, beatings, you know, to us. And so I'm just kind of thinking, you know, when we talk about these topics, I like to also bring, you know, solutions or statistics, because people would just be like, it worked for me. And I'm like, it didn't always work for our people. And, you know, we always talk about how we want to get out of the white supremacist, patriarchal, capitalist society. Yet we continue to do the things that we have as a negative impact from slavery. So the last thing I wanted to just point out is that I felt that there is this link between abuse that comes from your parents and then my ability to take on the abuse of others, because my mom is hitting me, or somebody's like, this is because I love you. So now all of a sudden I think that it's okay because my formative and foundational people hit me and said that it was okay, that love is therefore couched into abuse. And I want us to have these conversations of what, like, how it's rooted in violence, and we see it as love because that's what our generations have taught us. And that's a white thing. That's not what Africans were doing. So
I wrote a piece last year, or maybe in 2018, called Black Girls Deserve a Love That Doesn't Hurt and That Starts With Us.
Yes.
And in the introduction paragraph, there's a quote that I had that says, we tell our daughters that a man who hits them doesn't love them after telling them their whole lives that we hit them because we love them.
Yes, come on, Nina.
And there's been documented research on the links between spanking and abuse and domestic violence. And I tell people all the time, when you deny a child their autonomy, you are grooming them to be taken advantage of.
Yes, we're telling them they don't own their body and that they're not important, and that they don't have control of their body. So when we send them to the world, they're looking for somebody who can own their body and tell them what to do, because they don't know how to think, because we never presented that chance to them. We never taught them how to think and to make decisions for themselves.
Thank you.
I wanted to offer something. I appreciate like all the stories. Something that we don't talk about enough or at all or whatever is mental health, and how there's a stigma, right, around how we address mental health. I know for myself, I hear a lot of people saying, oh, you know, I would never hit my kid. I said in the beginning, when Olodumare created this baby, like, you know what I'm saying, that I was going to treat this child like the child that I wasn't treated as, right? And for me, it's, you know, me and Egypt don't go through hitting phases. What we go through is my inability to regulate my emotions. I'm a person that I live with borderline personality disorder, and I go from low to high. I'm constantly believing that people are here in my life to use, abuse me, and to abandon me. And growing up with abandonment, that really compounds the issue, right? And also my parents grew up as abandoned folks, right? Or felt abandoned, you know, in whatever their perceptions. And so when I realized that, you know, in 2018 in May, I had a mental breakdown. I still don't like to call it that, but I guess that's what I was diagnosed with. I was in a mental institution for a week, and no one even cared. No one knew on Facebook. No one said, wow, DiDi's missing. Like, DiDi's not posting. What the fuck is going on? Like, you know, and it's fine. But I had to say to myself, you know, I'd always said I didn't want Egypt to grow up the way that we grew up, with my mother also dealing with borderline personality, but we didn't find out she had it until she died, and we were going through her papers, and, you know, she had it. I always said I didn't want to be the parent who makes a decision and then takes it away because it was a control issue, or you know, my mom would cry a lot, and, you know, I said I would never do that to Egypt. And I found myself during that year in 2018 crying uncontrollably all the time. And I remember, like, you know, my ex would be like, don't do that in front of that girl. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I'm like, where is the time for me to process my feelings and my shit? And like, if I'm constantly working, organizing, parenting in a perfect way, or trying to, you know, where is the time for me to process my shit? And so I took the advice of a lot of people who loved and cared about me. And my therapist recommended I go to the hospital. I thought it was going to be on some bullshit, like a 24-hour, 48-hour hold. Them niggas kept me there for 7 days. Like, you know what I'm saying? I was like, no, this is not what oh shit, okay. But it gave me a time to grieve a lot of the childhood that had been taken away from me. It gave me a time. And, you know, then I stuck with the recommendation of the medication I was on, because I remember the time that Egypt was holding my face. No cry, mommy, no cry. And I did not want that for my kid. And so I think it's imperative for us to also, like, I can't remember who just said, you know, we have to take responsibility. Like, yes, that is the way that we were parented. And yes, that is the generational trauma, but we have to stop. And the way that we stop, I do feel, is having these conversations and being like, this is where it showed up for me, and this is how I didn't know. And this is the information I garnered and I gleaned from, you know, this resource. Nina was saying that, you know, you started working at early childhood education or doing advocacy, and you're like, oh, okay, now this makes sense. And we're connecting the dots. And like, I said the Women of Brewster Place because I really meant it. We need to begin weaving together our stories, so that way this patchwork quilt don't have so many holes in it. And I'm not putting the social responsibility on Black folks. Sorry, I'm a poet. I'm not putting the social responsibility on Black folks. What I'm saying is, if not saying if Shamell is right, but once I look at this link and I sift through it myself, to be like, if indeed whiteness is something that gave us spankings and like this continuation of the whipping, right? then we need to decolonize ourselves and our bodies from that trauma that has been imparted upon us. And I'm going to shut up now and ask folks because we've really been here unpacking and doing the work. Ask folks if they'd like to join me again, number one. Number two, is there a question you feel like I didn't ask you? And number three, who would you like to see come on the show?
Is that for us or people in the comments?
No, I'm asking y'all. I'm not looking at the comments no more.
Oh, well, yeah, I would definitely like to join you again. And I don't know, I missed the first 30 minutes, so I don't know what questions were asked.
Yeah, I think you only missed one question, but I would definitely join again. I think this is super important work, and it can't just be unpacked in one, Facebook Live. It's going to take so much more time. It's going to take so much more patience for ourselves and for others. It's hard work. I don't always get it right, and I openly tell my son that all the time. Like, I'm not going to always get it right. Someone was talking about their, I think it was Dr. Shamell, like, their child is on some random schedule. I'm like, yes, I don't even fight it. Like, he sleep right now because he's been up all day. So he sleep right now. And I'm just like, I can't, because for me, when I decided that I wanted to raise a free child, without violence, without pain, without hurt, that actually has, one, made us much closer. And two, just a lot easier parenting. Trying to parent through violence and through anger is hard. Like, it's hard. So for me to just like, look, now get it together. Like right now we're debating this or having an argument about or having issues with him keeping his room clean. And I'm like, here's why. Like, whatever. But to say, I think that this is important work, and in order for us to like break these cycles, is super, super important. And I think when we look at children as people, as as our equals, and not this hierarchy that again is based in whiteness.
Exactly.
Still based in whiteness. When we remove all of that, we have opportunity to create nurturing relationships that will last their entire lives. And we're preparing them. We don't have to prepare them for the world that others created. We can prepare them for the world that they really deserve.
Absolutely. I totally agree. So for me, this idea of us having these free children, I want us to definitely come back, and I want to ask the question about how our own healing and our own relationship to possible abuses, including sexual abuse, and the difference between what's sexual abuse and what's, childhood sexual exploration. I want to definitely have another conversation about that. This idea also of our kids being too free, or, I've been told that I'm not a good parent by, some people that are from the old school type. And then, people like us, everyone's like, wow, how did you figure that out? You're such a great parent. Like, your son is a sovereign being. What do you mean you learn from your son? So I want to talk about how hard it was for me to drop my ego in parenting. When my son said that he wasn't moving to Dartmouth with me because it was cold and white and he wasn't just talking about the snow. And I was like, ooh, is he wrong? And what does it mean for me to actually say, okay, you can stay with your dad now. We'll work this out. And I'm like hurt. I was like, oh, another man abandoning me. But I had to put my ego aside and say, what is best for my child as this sovereign being who knows the lessons that he came here to learn? And so I want to pose that question. And the lesson that in the contract that he has with his father, my son told me at 5, Mommy, we were spirits before we came into these bodies. I chose you. You told me to. We have a contract. And I'll never forget it. And so what are the responsibility do I have as someone that is guiding him along this journey to get rid of my ego and the fact that I think I have to teach him everything in this hierarchical structure that we're trying to dismantle. So that's what I would love for us to continue thinking. And I just want to praise each and every one of you as parents, because you have taught me so much. And I just would love to collaborate with each and every one of y'all moving forward.
Same.
So
Yeah, I definitely feel a lot the same. I feel a lot of that. And I don't really have a question, but yeah, I would like to meet again and to continue discussing this, to explore our relationship with control as parents, because that was a big one for me. What relinquishing control looks like. You know, I talk a lot about childism and about the idea of children as second-class citizens or lesser people, the idea of especially Black children as property or possessions. And I feel like a lot of that is rooted in, you know, the spanking and abuse conversation. When you don't see people as people, you can justify the harm you caused them.
Yes.
So I definitely feel like I would like to have a greater conversation about that, about the roots of that in white supremacy, and about the roots of that in slavery, and how it for Black children, especially how it intersects with anti-Blackness and anti-Black racism. I think there's, you know, as multiple of you have said, there's a lot of layers to this conversation. There's a lot more to be explored, to just be discussed, and I would definitely like to come back and do that.
Thank you.
So I would love to come. I would love to come back. I don't think we even scratched the surface. I want to talk more about parenting and the white gaze, and why a lot of the beatings and the punishments and yelling and screaming comes from us performing, and our parents wanting us to perform and to be correct, so that our kids are not judged. And I want to get into all of that. So I'm extremely open to coming back.
All right. Well, thank y'all very much. I want to say that we did not get to the topic that Shamell and I came up with about healing around food, the sexual trauma and protection, you know, the quote unquote fast-tailed little girls, and childhood exploration versus childhood molestation, and tips for parents on how to deal when you stumble across your children exploring with other children. And Tanya Fields will join us on May 11th. She was not able to join us today. And so I encourage all of y'all to just keep this conversation going. I'm going to be hopping on the road to go get my child, but I would also encourage y'all to stay tuned for updates, because we will be discussing even absentee parent wounds. We might have to make this a 3-part series, because I got some deep mama wounds.
Yes.
Same.
I just got through some of my mommy wounds, and it was 20 years in the making. So DiDi and I have been talking about it, and I would actually love to bring my mom on with you, DiDi.
Okay.
That just popped in my head right now.
Wow.
And I think that I can offer some healing for others through our process. So I know this came out of nowhere.
Y'all turning me into Sally Jesse Raphael. What?
I will definitely tune into that, because yeah, my mother's not there yet. So God bless you. Like, my mother's not there yet.
Trust me, it's only been like 2 weeks. It's because of the Rona. She said, I think it's because of the Rona.
Well, whatever the reason, let's do it. Like, my mom's not there yet, unfortunately. And so yes, that's still stuff that I'm unpacking during the Rona.
All right. Well, thank y'all very much for helping me. This has been an amazing episode of The Full Set. I'm so glad y'all are willing to engage in these topics and conversation with me. And stay tuned, for those who are still watching, for this Monday, April 27th at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Moya Bailey will be joining us. So thank you. I hope all of y'all have a great weekend. Peace.
Love y'all. Be good.
Love you too.
Not be good, be well. I was like,
Be well.
Safe and Rona. That's what I meant.
All right, y'all. Peace.